Hey everyone, this is the Love of Cinema podcast. We like to talk movies. If you like to talk movies too, you come to the right place.
So what Socha Na Tha did to me was that it put the girl and the boy in a room and said, talk to each other. And the girl starts telling her plight. And the way that she tells her plight is not in a way where she's spiraling and she's saying that, you know what, this is unfair and this is discriminatory. She's saying all of that. But the way that she's saying it, that to me was a striking image. Because for Imtiaz's characters, and it's the first film and it's a rom-com, that told me that there is this element of self-consciousness or awareness which is there in all his characters, that the position that I'm in is not fair to me.
Exploration of romance and relationships in popular Hindi cinema has come a long way, right from V. Shantaram and Bimal Roy, to Raj Kapoor, Guru Dutt, to Gulzar, Yash Chopra, to Adi Chopra, Karan Johar, and Bhansali. That exploration has evolved and varied. But by and large, with the exception of Gulzar, it has remained mostly quite dreamy, and although I'm not a fan of the word, for lack of a better word, quote-unquote Bollywood. Then, in 2005, came along a storyteller whose approach to romance and relationships felt like a breath of fresh air. And today, his name's synonymous with romance, intimacy, heartbreak, and self-discovery. This is Himanshu, and you're listening to the Love of Cinema podcast. But before moving on, an important reminder. Now, you can support the Love of Cinema podcast on a monthly basis. If you enjoy organic conversations centered on Indian cinema, Love of Cinema podcast was created for people just like you. So if you find value in the podcast, if it helps you in discovering new films or new facets about familiar films, please do consider supporting the show. Love of Cinema podcast is my passion project. And with every episode, I've attempted to create something that cinephiles will continue to find value, not just today, but over time as well. To create something that goes beyond banter, beyond trending films. So if you find value in the conversations on the pod, do consider supporting the show. Your support will help me continue creating content with shelf life for fans of Indian cinema like you everywhere across the globe. You'll find the link to support the show in the episode notes. You can also support the show directly from the podcast website. It's fast and easy to support the show, and more importantly, your support is greatly appreciated. Independent pods like this one don't have a platform for amplification and distribution. Independent pods rely on amplification through its listeners. So if you like the episode, please share the episode on social media, because that's the only way people would discover the pod. Also, do take a minute to review and rate the podcast. That would be much appreciated and would help the podcast. Back to today's episode. I'm delighted to have on this episode Kanika Katyal, a freelance culture writer based out of Delhi. Kanika has contributed to a string of publications, including First Post, Silver Screen, Critical Collective, and Clio Journal, among others. Her book proposal on reading romance in Imtiaz Ali's cinema was a nominee at the Screen to Word Mami HarperCollins Imprint Grant 2019. Kanika is someone who has keenly analyzed the films of Imtiaz Ali in an effort to deconstruct his storytelling and his take on romance, intimacy, and institutions. Kanika and I chatted about Socha Na Tha and Imtiaz Ali and tried to unpack some of the common recurring motifs in his films, like the idea of soulmates, the idea of conversation, and the peculiar lyrical quality to his films. Intimacy through conversation, misfits, escape and self-discovery through travel, and all other things Imtiaz Ali. Here goes. Hey Kanika, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Hi, Himanshu. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
I'm doing great. Thank you so much, first of all, for coming on the podcast. And I know we had been exchanging Twitter messages and interacting on Twitter. But it's finally great to chat with you on a movie that both you and I like very much. So I'm really glad that you're here. So thanks for coming again.
Thank you, and same here.
So, Kanika, I was thinking that, I wanted to just open our chat today by just talking about why I chose Socha Na Tha to talk about on the podcast. So I'll just take a minute to talk about why I like this film and why I think this film is a key film in the journey of a key filmmaker. So I'll just make my short case real quick, and then I'll hand it over to you. And you tell me why this is your favorite film and why you would love to talk about this film. So, I chose Socha Na Tha because, I believe this is a key film in Imtiaz Ali's filmography. And I believe that for a number of reasons. For starters, I look at Socha Na Tha as the genesis of almost all the recurring motifs and themes in his films, and we'll talk more about these themes and motifs later on. But a key film in the journey of a key filmmaker working mostly in the romance genre. And now, why do I call Imtiaz a key filmmaker of the genre? That's because, again, I think that, he stands out from other prominent filmmakers working in the genre, like Bhansali or Karan Johar or Aditya Chopra or any of those, or any of the classic, the modern masters like Yash Chopra. His exploration of relationships is perhaps somewhat very different from what these people do. I think, what people like Bhansali, Karan Johar, and Aditya Chopra, their exploration, I find somewhat removed from reality for most part. It's more quote unquote Bollywood. It's more dreamy. It's less raw. It's less real. Whereas Imtiaz Ali's approach to romance and relationships is more in tune with what happens in real life, right? It's more real, more natural, good exploration of relationship. Look at relationships in as a progression, right? A relationship kindles, it deepens, then perhaps it strains, it evolves over time, then perhaps it ruptures, then it again heals, and so forth. So many of Ali's films look at relationships through that particular prism, I think, much in the same way as Linklater or Baumbach. That's what I think about Imtiaz Ali. And I also think that his characters are much more relatable. So that's why I think Socha Na Tha is a very interesting film. Would love to hear why you like this film.
I agree with some of the points that you've said in terms of the evolution of relationships that is explored in Imtiaz Ali's work that we do not find in the filmmakers that you've mentioned. However, I don't agree with the real nature of his films or the real nature of relationships there. I don't think they are relatable for sure. Because I think that in the time that Imtiaz Ali started making films, I think his characters are very much the product of those times. I think those characters in films had a long time coming and they came at the right time. So if you look at the context in which these films have evolved, his first film, Socha Na Tha, he says, took him 3 years to even release. So let's say broadly it is the 2000s. And we've had Lagan, we've had Dil Chahta Hai. These two films, I think, to me, in my understanding, are very, very important films when one is understanding how the nature of Bollywood is changing. Dil Chahta Hai gave expression, pretty much put youth of a certain class, etc., on the map, gave expression to a voice there. Which I think spoke to a lot of people. It came on to become a cult film. However, that film, I would say, was a coming of age film. It was an exploration of friendships and relationships, not so much institutions that we are used to seeing on film, and the biggest institution being the family, right? Otherwise, it is the police. Otherwise, it is the education system, the college system, all of that. So our characters have been engaging with institutions. Even if you look at Lagan, there is a big big institution that we're dealing with. However, that's a separate discussion. So Dil Chahta is still dealing with relationships by themselves that people are forging, engaging with today, etc. However, when you talk about the romance genre, I think one cannot talk about the evolution of any kind of romantic film today if one doesn't talk about DDLJ. I think in 1995, Adi Chopra's debut film was really, really a big film. It's an important film that to me said that the woman is important. She needs to be wooed. She has a say in accepting her partner, and there is a lot of pressure that she also undergoes in terms of choosing. And then there are expressions given to women throughout that film. So there is a girl dreaming about a partner. There is space for her diary. There is space for her conversation with her mother. There is a space for her conversation with her sister. And there are these small conversations that women are engaging in terms of a partner within the institution of marriage. Prior to that, what we saw in films was pretty much the dominance of this parental authority of this institution of marriage so much into the lives of the characters that space for expression wasn't there on screen so much. And I'm only talking about the 80s and 90s. Of course, there has been that expression in the 70s. I think the way that Rajnigandha deals with feminine expression, female sexuality, I don't think a film like that has been made again. I don't think a film like 27 Down, Avtar Krishna Gill's film that deals with these existential issues of do I want to engage in self and all of that. I think Money Calls Cinema, Duvidha, Ashad Ka Ek Din, I think those films have never been made again. But coming to mainstream Bollywood, I think that expression wasn't there. There was a predominance of an institution. And how I look at Adi Chopra is, I think I see him as a bit of a reformer. So his reformation of relationships or female agency, etc., happens within the framework of marriage or institution. So that is very clear. We are not moving away from what is the ultimate goal. But a woman needs to be considered, needs to be respected. Her wishes need to be taken into consideration. So that whole cycle of कॉन्सेंट जिससे हम डील कर रहे थे इन द 80s की लड़की कॉलेज में दिखी फॉलो किया पट जाएगी DDLJ changed that. There was space between the hero and the heroine to talk, communicate, for her to express disagreement with a certain behavior type. She's not falling in love with him because until he meets all of this, until there is this moment of him actually living up to how he can be a partner to her, that this is happening. But her destiny is still pre-decided, right? Adi Chopra is also important because I think in terms of that reformation, if you look at Rab Ne Bana Di Jodi, or if you look at Mohabbatein, he's unleashing widow-free marriage on society, which doesn't happen. I know that so my way of looking at it, of these relationships is, of course, as through a feminist lens or through a lens of a woman,
Sure.
etc.
Right.
So for me, whenever one talks about love or romance, these relationships need to be considered. But DDLJ will tell you that the nation state is important. Even if you're living in London, Hindustani ladki ke kya rules hain, Hindustani ladke ke kya expectations hai, you have to fall in all of that. You have to finally take everyone alongside and make everyone, turn the whole disapproving father into approving, right? Which is what we've seen in David Dhawan's films also. So it's not as though Imtiaz is the first filmmaker of this kind of cinema, or that other filmmakers have been engaged in this. I think Sanjay Leela Bhansali, the way that he gets feminine expression, I think is undeniable. Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam really tapped into that emotional intensity of what it means to, really fall in a forbidden way in love. I think Khamoshi was transgressive. I think I'm not so much a fan of Gangubai and his recent films, but I thought these two films in particular, I thought Devdas was amazing because there was this space of two women expressing desire. Then the other filmmaker who's making romance films is Karan Johar. Karan Johar, similarly, the institution of family is deeply entrenched in his storytelling. That is his way of engaging with the world, and that's fair to him. If you look at Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, it's supposed to be a college love story. Where does this whole idea of my wife dying and then me finding another bride comes into? I'm just, for the sake of jokes, I'm just simplifying the story, but I'm saying marriage is very much a key destination in the relationship. And that marriage has to form in a way that the family approves of it. Finally, hum log wo diware tod ke, we will bring everybody in, because that is the fabric of our society. And the way that he projects it on screen, he doesn't situate it in a social context as far as his demonstrative position is concerned. For him, that is his emotional, intimate being. For him, if you look at K3G, for example, the line is, it's all about loving your parents. For him, that universe of parental authority is deeply a part of his being. So although K3G has that kind of contestation with authority, which is a class conflict, etc., and which is remarkable, I think it's again one of my favorite films, and in so many ways, in so many layers to that film. But even there is the parental authority figure, there is the father figure, there is a Diwali celebration. Of course, the social economic context is all there, but we're talking Bollywood, so I'm saying in terms of the emotional landscape of his films, there is no confusion as far as where this is heading. When in that space, when a filmmaker like Imtiaz Ali makes a film like Socha Na Tha, which begins in the same way, about two families trying to arrange a marriage between two people, and say tumhari ab umar ho gayi hai, all of those lines. His films from the beginning said marriage is not the destination. Marriage is an exploration. It may or may not happen. This film, in fact, just completely outrightly rejected it. Though from that moment on, I think the way that his films have dealt with the institution, and in fact the anti-institution nature of his films, to me, the beginning is that marriage isn't the goal in his films, in the life of these two characters. Sometimes they're meeting by accident, sometimes they're meeting to sort of choose and engage with one another. However, never from the beginning, the end goal isn't decided. So that to me is the first trait of his films that shows you that there is something different going to happen here. Marriage nahi ho rahi hai, which is how we've always imagined. Now, getting into a more deeper analysis of, let's say, Socha Na Tha and this whole arranged marriage concept.
Right.
The images that appear in the film from the beginning, a girl is meeting a boy, and then a conversation ensues. What we have usually seen on screen in such a setup, and this is not a unusual setup, is that there is very little space given to the boy and the girl to communicate and talk on the first. It's mostly just glances, etc. So there is one kind of films that will show you the oppressive nature of that, which will be like there is a rejection of the girl, the images that we're used to. There is, critiquing of her looks or how she's not meeting social expectations, etc., etc. So there is either a rejection, or this whole scene is made into a hum saath saath hai sort of a scene where everybody agrees and the girl is the most beautiful and the best thing to happen. So we are used to only learning either that the rishta didn't happen because of a class, caste, religion, or gender, whatever issue. So there's a violence there, or that it is a match made in heaven from the go. And now let's get into festivities. So what Socha Na Tha did to me was that it put the girl and the boy in a room and said, talk to each other. And the girl starts telling her plight. And the way that she tells her plight is not in a way where she's spiraling and she's saying that, what, this is unfair and this is discriminatory. She's saying all of that. But the way that she's saying it, that to me was a striking image. Because for Imtiaz's characters, and it's the first film and it's a rom-com, that told me that there is this element of self-consciousness or awareness, which is there in all his characters, that the position that I'm in is not fair to me. What I'm doing is not right. But I am surviving. And you know what? How I survive? My parents have no idea what I do, actually. So to me, that that female character and this kind of split between what her self image is and what her social image is. And she tells him, "मैं balcony से कूद के, I climbed down, I've had a boyfriend also, I've done this." That image and that behavior of the girl in the room versus when she steps out of that door and how she is, there is a clear chasm between that. And to me,
That's a
that
great
was,
point. Yeah.
yeah, that to me was the most, that was the point, that was the thing that we were all looking for. Just for somebody to say that, you know what, my parents don't get it, but I'm not the person that they think they are. And I don't want to ascribe. That's another thing. That's what the boy says. And then they get into this conversation and they're both revealing intimate details about each other to the other person. You know, I also have a girlfriend. I've never told anyone about this because she comes from a different religion. I don't know how it's happening with you. This space of revealing your heart out, this space of conversation, it actually is in Imtiaz's later film what it develops as a soulmate, or you know, his idea of what his idea of soulmate. But this idea of conversation between people in that intimate space in a way that is not theatrical, that is not dialogue based, and that conversation with the other person is like an equal without any kind of expectation of either a romantic favor or a sexual favor or something leading there, did not happen in Bollywood films between a hero and a heroine who were romantically attached. The conversation that they usually had was leading up to something. It was flirtation. They'll meet in a college, they'll say, "My friend, this friend, you know, whatever," or that "I like you," and then, "You know what, let's do this." And this is something that you cannot label. It's not a friendship. How is this intimacy coming? Where is this coming from? What comfort is this? What zone is this? They're not strangers. They might never meet again. I think that was with no expectation. So the first time that I watched that film and this scene, and I was like, you know, I get it, because my parents don't know what I do. And we just never knew and so I think we'll talk about this, about the criticism that his films get with respect to female characters. But I think as an equal, female love interest was not explored in this way. Shah Rukh's film, I think, definitely give respect to the heroine in the film. However, Shah Rukh's character has mostly been of a savior, of a woman stuck in a certain position. She needs liberation. She needs help. She needs support. I'm not saying that's wrong. That is our social reality, especially the characters in which those films were set. That was very much the reality. But the woman was never an equal. Here, they are both saying, you know, you do this, I do this too. And how about this and that? That, to me, has happened in the romance genre only in Imtiaz's films. In the beginning. When we talk of now Zoya, for example, Zoya, I think definitely for her, and she also makes films. However, I don't think Zoya's point of interest is romance per se. Her point of interest
Absolutely.
is relationships and fairness and equality. And I think her best work are, to me, that short film she made with the that was part of the collection. I think that's one of her most prominent films because she gets a pulse on relationships. She has a pulse on what is fairness, what is her major concern is not romance. You have to be, there has to be an equal exchange. There has to be a position of understanding. There has to be a position of respect for each other, support, etc. Intimacy. If it flowers into love, great. But you know what's more important? Equality is more important. Understanding is more important. Your position with respect to the other person is more important.
Yeah, I digress. But what did you think about when Harry met Sejal?
Right. I think so. I was saving this for the defense and criticism part. But I think that, okay, Harry met Sejal. Let me just speak a little bit about how Imtiaz's film has gotten darker with each one. Okay, with each film, he's gone a little darker. So Rockstar, if say Rockstar is disillusionment, then um, Highway is wounded, broken, trauma. And then Tamasha is absolute numbness and, absolute alienation. Once you've done alienation, which is which is a very strong emotion, it's felt very intensely, and it is also indicative that something has gone really wrong in the systems around you. Because alienation is a Marxist concept. It says that society is so stratified that it has pushed the person away from institutions of support and also from each other. So there is no community around you now. You are alone and you have to deal with yourself alone. So once you've established that alienation, that deep disconnect, what is it now that where is it going to go? It's going to go even to the deep dark end, which is, I think, what happened in Harry Met Sage. The character that Shah Rukh plays is of this man, and he's probably in his 40s in the film, the character. He says he's gone so far ahead, so far away from his roots, that he considers himself an absolute gone case in terms of ever coming back to any kind of healthy relationship, a healthy life, a healthy lifestyle. That he feels so uprooted, which is, beyond alienation, that he feels so uprooted that he can't find his way back. So the lines of that song, which is that, jab se gaon se मैं शहर हुआ इतना कड़वा हो गया कि जहर हुआ, I think that is, he's a very bitter, resentful man who has been so entrapped within the past pain of his life. Yes, for sure. But he's never found a way out of it, and he's become bitter towards society as well. When you are dealing with somebody of such an extreme nature, to find a character who's equally going through something stronger, I think this is very difficult to achieve as a story. If you have something so towering, this tower needs to be demolished. Yes, but it cannot be done with an equal force. So what? So the kind of, because then it is a violence, then it is a Anurag Kashyap film, then it is not an Imtiaz Ali film. The message is that you have to sort of amend the tower, bring it down with love. So the foil that he presents there is of absolute innocence. So if this is the post-lapsarian part of the world, this is a pre-lapsarian world. So she has to be absolutely innocent. She has to be absolutely sort of pure, whatever. I think there is a power imbalance inherent in that relationship, right? That's one. Because she is coming from absolute innocence. So that's the first thing that we need to understand. The criticism that the film received was saying that it's an anti-feminist film, and especially the dialogue where she says that kya main tumhare layak hu? Am I deserving of your desire, basically, which reveals an imbalance in power. But if you take that line out of context, it will seem completely anti-feminist. But if you look at the context in which the film is done, I did not see it the way that it's been received largely. I think what we do pretty much now as audiences is that we do not understand or even have the patience to engage in context. And the other thing is, we do not accept imperfect characters anymore. Shah Rukh is not a perfect character in the film. He's not a perfect man. Why are we expecting perfect behavior from him? That's one. That's so to me. Okay, now coming back to, I think I've given a large goal, lekin answer nahi kiya. I think there was a power imbalance, but it was a story between, the Beauty and the Beast and the devil and the, the angel and all of that, because it was a story of redemption. And it was about sort of like engaging with this man, this beast, showing him humanity and goodness and bringing him back to who he was, bringing him back to his roots. That was the story. And Imtiaz deals with these kind of narratives, these oral forms of story. The problem with Harry Met Sally was that I think I will come to the story also, but when you engage with somebody like Shah Rukh Khan, it is very rare to find an actor, female actor, who you are going to put into contestation with. He's so towering that the actress can only be diminutive, that the actress can only be, I think that is the flaw in his stardom, which he tries to grapple with in pockets, with the film like Chak De, with the film like Dear Zindagi. But in the romance genre, his image will really be shaken up. I think if he engages with an equal woman saying "I reject you," that cannot happen. That's the other thing that I felt, that I think that casting was done very much, that film was done very much to cater to Shah Rukh Khan's audience. And I was waiting for this film because I thought Imtiaz and Shah Rukh is going to launch into some other planet.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
But it was so I think these were the two things. The third thing that I
must add, Kanika, I thought Anushka was pretty good in the film.
Okay.
In her favor, I must make that statement that she did hold her ground. But like you said, absolutely. I mean, with stars like Shah Rukh or even Bachchan before that, I mean, you do have that problem where they're going to overshadow no matter how the character is written or how it is portrayed. And that's also one of the reasons why a lot of great actors kind of keep postponing acting with these stars, because they always fear that, no matter how good my character is or the treatment is or a director is, I'm always going to get overshadowed or towered. So, that's an interesting point.
I thought also that the character of Anushka was and this is something that I think I was waiting to talk about later, but let's just bring it. I think that the way that Geet was conceived and the way that she was written, I do not think enough rooting was given to Anushka's character in Harry Met Sejal. She seemed like an extension of Geet, like an overplaying Geet, but she did not seem so much her own person, which may be a part of the story also, because you are trying to present two polar opposites of one being a worldly man and the other not even stepping out of, pretty much very much engaged with her family, very sheltered, very protective, very, very protective, which is why I think I wanted to, the point about Imtiaz Ali and his heroines that I was saying earlier is that all of his heroines run away from home. So to me that is key. That's the best thing, because to be able to engage in a space, in a romantic space, a space of desire with another man, you cannot do it in the same way when there is importance given to parental figures and authorities in a space, in a geographic space, in an emotional space, etc. So what made Imtiaz Ali's film different was that he made he pushed everybody else to the background. It's just going to be the girl and the boy talking and they'll figure it out. When parental figures and their influences will come, because that's the shaping of the character. However, they are not deciding their fate right now. They are in the background. So and the only way to do that is to send the girl on a journey, send her on a holiday, so she's away from them. And this is very interesting. It used to happen in some of Raj Kapoor's film, I've noticed. So they wouldn't send the girls to a journey, but they will have the mother die. So the girl will only have the father, and the father is an absent figure, so he's working. So the girl has a lot of time to engage with men outside or bring them home because the father is absent. The films where there is a mother, you cannot escape that. This is a part of our reality. Your mom is going to ask you where you're going. Okay, where you're coming. Then what? Help me in the household. Your roles are fixed. Your duties are fixed. It is only when you're on a holiday and away from everywhere is that you can live your utopia, which is true for a lot of women, especially because Imtiaz does not engage in institutions, like I said. So family is one. The other thing is his characters do not meet so much in classrooms. He's against that also, I think. That's how I read it. They are not characters who you will be like classmates hain bachpan se, so there is this kind of angle.
No.
और या फिर लड़कियां कॉलेज जाती है तो ही लड़कों से मिलती है. His imagination is कि meko, and which is why I love him. I think he says that I am against these collective institutions. Maybe I'm not against them in a way that I want to create an alternative model to society, but my imagination does not feature there. So, like I said, his arranged marriage scene is also different. His scene of where the lovers are meeting is different. Um, so but the parental figures feature, for example, Geet, if you talk about her. So there's the clothes, etc. And then she's talking about herself in the train. And she's talking about her family. So her identity, she's saying, my family thinks that the birth ye hona chahiye, but this is what I do. Similarly, Anushka will say, my family was telling me this, but I'm here. These are signs. You can tell that lives of women are really, really so impressioned by figures around them. There's no escaping for these kind of characters. So that's the other thing. I think that her character in that sense was making a lot of sense. You're reforming a monster. You have to be absolutely pure. Now, the criticism to that film is that why are women expected to fill into those roles of emotional labor for men? And I think that started with Tamasha, that criticism, or possibly with Rockstar. And I think it got coupled up because Ranveer was doing a lot of coming age films at the time. So it just sort of became like women are only fulfilling roles to reform the monster, etc. I think that if you look at, firstly, like I said, I am fine with imperfect characters. Because to me, these men were against the idea of toxic masculinity or macho men, or men do not need anything from you. Just support my household, that was a foil. Here are men who are saying that we are vulnerable. I am emotional. I need help. I'm weaker than you. You're maybe stronger than me.
They acknowledge that they're fractured, and they know that.
And then because maybe you deal with these things, you found ways, and women have, because I think in our society they're taught survival in some way or the other. They find their ways around it, whatever. But then if you look at form of the films, the first half of the film is always the woman's journey. The first half of every film, she's talking about her relationships. She's talking about her goals. The wooing doesn't even start until the second half. And it is only towards the end that the man reveals his traumas, or she comes to know. And then she kind of takes that role up. So I see it as a bit of a yin and yang, whatever. Like the first half, it is the man showing her around. And then this, like in Rockstar or in Socha Na Tha, I think the element, the first thing is, I've never been this way with another person. The way that you understand me, I've never had this. And I think I'm able to be myself with you. So they have also, women have a wish list, or they have this, and I want to do this. And they've not had anybody do it before. So the man is playing that role for them. The other thing is, the other thing that I think in terms of the criticism of women doing these roles of emotional labor is, if you look at real life, I think men are undeniably in a position of power, of supremacy. The systems of marriage and society are giving them a lot. All they need to do is just occupy that space. Women have to fight. They have to fight for basic rights. They have to fight for their freedom. They have to fight for financial independence, mobility, education. There's a struggle at every point. It is very difficult for a man to understand and completely relate to the struggles of a woman if they do not have the kind of consciousness to do so. That's what I think. Okay, it's not a fact. Because there are so many things that are given so easily to men, is that it shapes your worldview very differently. And I'm not even talking about men who are abusive or violent. I'm talking about very normal friends of mine, who just do not get it. So, for example, even somebody taking a cab at night is a bit of a situation for women. You have to inform 3 people. So many things like that come so easily. It shapes your psychology in a very different way. So when you engage with men, and men who've known Bollywood and have absolutely no idea about consent, and just think that even engaging a one note with a woman means that she's my girlfriend, have to undergo a lot of unlearning to be able to form a deep bond of intimacy with a woman. Who is now going to teach them that, you know? So, as individuals, I think everyone's journey is to learn and grow on their own. But a lot of my friends who tell me, and they've engaged with relationships, they tell me that the unlearning that I had to go through came through women, came through the intimacy that I shared with women, because with women around me, the way that they questioned everything, the way that they told me, you know what, no, or right, or whatever. And he said that that really opened me to a lot of questioning around traditions that I also just accepted. And that letting go of privilege is a big thing. That letting go of power is a big thing. I know that it seems like the right thing to do, and it is. And I'm not saying we need to give kudos to men, but I'm saying it is a hard process. I, for example, also come from a certain privilege of a certain class context. I come from a certain religion that is dominant, etc. There are so many things that I can take for granted. It is only when I engage with somebody who is of a different marginalized category than me is when the unlearning happens. Even when we talk about the nature of violence, there is a very different violence that happens to women of a certain class, to a certain caste versus the other. So I'm saying that unlearning is a difficult process for anyone. And now for men to do unlearning in relationships, then one would say, why is that even in need? Yaar? Shadi to karni hai, she has to just take care of your household. What then Imtiaz's films have said, I think, because he removed Shadi out of the picture, he said, now let us try to understand each other. Let us try to forge bonds of intimacy. So, in Harry Met Sejal also, I would situate my understanding of the film in this context. That here is a man who actually perhaps needs that kind of a relationship for him to really start believing in the world, start believing in the goodness of the world. And it is a relationship of that kind. That's how I saw the film. And she is running away from an institution that's giving her everything per se, except her identity. So she's already married, she's with a family, she's a rich girl, she is a whatever, she's a lot going for her. Why does she then need to engage with a man like that? These are extremely complex questions. But this, to me, this is the nature of storytelling. These are stories. Stories
Yes.
ask you these complex questions.
Right. And I think that's a film where he kind of stepped out a bit from his comfort zone. So that's why I like that film more than anything else. But I think we should segue back to Socha Na Tha, because we could keep on talking about this film.
Sorry.
But going back, Kanika, to that scene that you were talking about, that when Viren and his family come over to Aditi's, and as part of the whole arranged marriage song and dance, when they both go upstairs to a room, I think the movie really sets its tone and starts to unleash as a completely different animal, especially if you think circa 2005 when the movie came out. And I think that's essentially the first spotting, if you will, of Imtiaz Ali's signature as a storyteller, because that's where, what you were saying, he's doing that perhaps for the first time, or we are seeing that for the first time, that, it's about the boy and the girl kind of feeling comfortable with each other unknowingly, as to why the underlying reasons. But that particular scene, and then also there is another scene in Socha Na Tha where they climb up the hill to the lighthouse in Goa. And it feels like a nothing scene. I mean, in the sense that not much happens. But it's not actually a nothing scene, right? I mean, there's a lot that's going on. It shows how Viren can truly be himself and talk freely and say unfiltered stuff when he's with Aditi. And I think that's also, another scene, that those two companion scenes kind of set the tone for what Imtiaz Ali will be doing, not in just that film, but in the years to come. Where he's going to keep on going back to those motifs of, a girl kind of essentially all the girls in his films, they reach the breaking point after their engagement. And that's when I think they travel or go on a road trip or something. So the engagement is always the breaking point. And once they're engaged, and then the discovery starts and then they're meeting somebody else and so forth. So I just thought those two scenes are very interesting because that was the first time probably we got a taste of Imtiaz Ali's signature in that particular context.
Yes, absolutely. I think the couple of scenes that I had shortlisted, the meeting scene, then Goa, and then of course the scene of confession, etc. I think very, very essential. Although at that time, of course, it was, and when I watched it, I did not see it the way that I see now in terms of a recurring motive. And I'm very happy that that happened to me. To me, the most interesting point, like I said, was just eloping as opposed to settling down. That was what I thought was incredible. But Goa thing is very important because, yes, like we talk about the journey, the getting away, so that everything becomes the background and we can now engage with each other. The why One of the things that we thought we'll begin with, and why what makes Imtiaz Ali different is this whole idea of conversation, which to him forms a part of his larger idea of soulmates. His idea of romance or love, and soulmates, it comes from various traditions, from Persian tradition, from bhakti, from a lot of places. And then what is it that conversation is doing? It's basically saying that love to me is acceptance. You get me, and the discomfort that you're giving me, I haven't felt it before. And it's interesting to me because it's as much for the boy as it is for the girl. So those scenes are saying the boy needed that person to exchange all of his things with as much as she did. So, and that conversation is happening. So this slow building of intimacy is Imtiaz. There is no one of those love at first sight scenes in his film at all. There isn't even one of those ये लड़की को पटाना है तो गाना गाएंगे, or that there is too much emphasis on an event that changed everything and I felt she was the one. So this slow simmering that happens through conversations is very Imtiaz, and I think that is what was needed. Now, the way that one and then in the film, it is a little worrisome, but I think that is the nature of Bollywood. Is that the things that he's telling her, he's talking about a discomfort from his existing relationship in a way. He's saying, I want to go to a strip club, and she's saying, you know what, let's do it. The what the film is conveying it through the character of the man then is, she's a cool chick, my girlfriend is not. That's a little worrisome to me, but I think that is how it was in the time. Right. Or perhaps it is also said as a character in a casual way that I can't talk about this with Karen, the things that I'm talking about with you.
Right. But I think and it's a product of its time, so it's almost 15 years ago, right?
Yeah, definitely. So what that conversation is saying is that we are, here is what I was missing. That's another thing that is a recurrent thing in terms of, this is what I was missing in my life. The way that you're able to mirror me, the way that you're able to see me. I don't think before Imtiaz, any filmmaker even attempted to get into that space of, I want to transcend into a connection with somebody beyond the material zone. I think that was,
I think Gulzar used to try to do that. I mean, in some of the films like Mausam, or some of his earlier films, he did try to do that. Though again, I mean, we are talking even that era was completely different, especially for popular Hindi cinema. So he couldn't he couldn't rather kind of canter off. So he just had to do that within a certain framework. But I think he did try to do that. But other than that, yeah, I'm kind of stumped to think of any other name of a filmmaker.
No, you're right. I think that there were filmmakers, and you mentioned Gulzar, and I mentioned Manikul. I think the material that they engaged with was very intense, and I think that through their art, they did attempt to, and through these relationship motives, they did want to transform and build something that was transformative, that was deeply profound, and that would say, social expectations are one thing, but there is merit in building something deeper, and something that cannot be labeled, something that may not be accepted or even understood. So that kind of internal conflict, that the character also felt, that what is it that I'm feeling that doesn't form into the boxes, and so it's becoming a problem for my life. I think that had happened for sure. That I think that Duvidha is an incredible film, and I think films like these will never get again in the same way. But what I'm hinting about this soulmate connection, I don't think that had happened, which is funny also now that one talks about it. Why does one care for a soul? But the tradition that he's borrowing from really pushes to transcend, and to situate that transcendence in the context we're in is to me incredible. I'm not saying he delivers it to a point where sixer maar diya. But let me give you an example. For example, a film like Teri Meri Kahani, and Kunal Kohli is also a filmmaker who only makes rom-coms. So, he's a contemporary, even though he's not somebody who has had a consistently credible amount of work. But let's just talk about him, for example. In Teri Meri Kahani, he says, the film with Shahid and Priyanka, he says, I'm going to cover a huge age of the couple, and this couple is a soulmate, and they're going through 3 generations to find their way back into each other. So there is the 50s, and then they come back to 2020 or 2012 or whatever the film is. What the film really lacks is, I don't think they got into the nubs of the soulmate connection. Unfortunately, they were good in the present day, but the connection that is required to root the story in that kind of soulmate, sort of over the generations way. They will work with sets. Imtiaz Ali deals with real life locations. These films end up being a caricature of what they're saying, because they will put costume, they'll put dialogue in a way. Those characters are not really developing beyond Bollywood, per se. As opposed to, if you look at a film like Love Aajkal, which looked at 2 stories and say this is the same story. The way that those characters were really a part of the context that they were coming from, talking about the first Love Aajkal.
Right, I was going to add, yes.
Yeah, you can feel the intensity that this is the same person. Perhaps it did happen, perhaps it's my grandmother's story or whatever. So this investment in even building something deeper, something transcendental, that investment in love is important, because there are too many films being made about other things in which love figures as one of the key things, or sometimes ends up being the best part of a film. There are a lot of films, but for somebody to say this is all I'm going to talk about, that's incredible. So coming back to Socha Na Tha, that scene, it is just through this kind of conversation that they realize that perhaps I like spending time with this person. Maybe this could be the one. That's another key element. And then the third scene, to me, that was remarkable, was the scene of confession, where he is talking about his engagement, etc. And he comes back and climbs up her balcony, and they just have a beautiful song. And the song, the lyrical nature of Imtiaz's work is another thing that is very uniquely him. The lyrics are written in a way that advances the narrative, which is okay, happens in a lot of films. I think that his partnership with Irshad Kamil is commendable, because that expression is very unique to Imtiaz's films, because it talks about love, in a way that is very, very internal. That song, very internal. I am not saying that songs of that kind are not made, but I'm saying in the context of Bollywood that was happening. Comparisons of love songs happen in a big landscape, with landscape comparisons to nature, to all of that, in which the expression of that deeper feeling sometimes doesn't come forward, or doesn't come forward all the time. So he says in that song, for example, that the eyes that I have in front of me are the eyes that I've been looking for all my life, because they get my dreams. That is beautiful. He's saying that these eyes, this person gets my dreams. That is incredible intimacy, and there is no conversation happening. That is a beautiful scene to me. And then by the end of the song, he says the answer that I came to find out, I've got it.
I was going to say that Imtiaz Ali has a very peculiar way of depicting intimacy. I mean, and he does it very subtly, if you will. Even the scene that's shot at Sophia College, where her brother kind of spots them together, and there's a moment where Viren says that "Hamare beech mein kuch hai, Aditi," and she says, kind of, somewhat digressing, that "Tum yaad rakhna mujhe." And again, that's a beautiful scene that says and conveys a lot without too many lines. And, I think that's where we kind of sense the first time that the connection is there. There is, again, this whole angle that we didn't touch upon, is that, Aditi is brought up by her mamaji, I believe, right? I mean, she has lost her parents. And so there is this thing that she's always indebted to them for that, at some level. And she's always cognizant of that, right? That if I'm doing something wrong, it's almost like doing something wrong two times, because it's not the parents that have brought her up. Sorry, it's her legal guardians or her mamaji or whoever has, kind of essentially she's been living with. So that thing is always like a hanging sword on her. And she conveys that very beautifully, I think, throughout the movie. So I thought that scene was very nice. And talking about intimacy, I think that scene also kind of ties in with it. One more thing I just wanted to add, before we move on, is that, and I'm sure you have a lot to say about this, but you know how, like I said, in most of his films, the women in the films are engaged and then they fall for someone else. And in Socha Na Tha, it's Viren who is engaged, and he goes on to fall for Aditi, right, over time. My question to you was going to be, I mean, are there like telltale traces of Geet in Viren?
I think the scene that I'll respond to the scene. I think the scene that you picked out is remarkable, because now that you've said it, I remember it, and I think it was sort of a spark in the film.
It's a great scene.
And yeah, it's a great scene, and I think this idea of him running away from his house to go to her, and this idea of soulmates, it's basically Imtiaz planting that somebody is occupying my subconscious. So this idea of dreams, this idea of subconscious, these seem like esoteric concepts to somebody who has not engaged with the world in the same way. But this is very much a part of his universe. So that is incredible. Yeah, Viren is engaged. Do I see Geet and Viren? Very interesting. I never thought about it that way. I thought that there were seeds of Geet and Aditi perhaps, and then and Geet also flowing into Anushka, like I said. So one can really segregate, I think, some of Imtiaz's films into club them. So there is Socha Na Tha, Jab We Met, and Harry Met, whatever. Then there's Rockstar and Highway in one, and I think Love Aajkal 2, Love Aajkal 1, and I would put them in a separate category. Love Aajkal 2, which I think was a mistake, but anyway.
Yeah, definitely his weakest film, no doubt.
I didn't think of Aditi, but I will answer your question. I think Imtiaz's characters are misfits, and they are misfits in whatever place that they are. It could be misfits with respect to a family situation. It could be misfit in an education career. It could be misfit in a job. It could be whatever. So these are characters who are saying that, there is just something not fitting in, which is, I think, one can say about Viren, as much as one can say about Geet, as much as one can say about all the characters, male and female. So even this concept of, for example, engaging in a deeper connection, looking for something else, looking for liberation or a quest or self discovery, these questions only come to people who feel like they are a misfit and they haven't found their belonging yet. So with Viren, the film begins by his father imposing marriage on him, and him saying, "I'm not ready." Throughout the film, his character is of this man who is just confused. You know, he wants one thing that he doesn't. He's in a relationship that he doesn't. He wants another girl, and the nature of love that has evolved between them is as confusing to them as it is to everyone around them. So it is not a dominating force, or even for them to say, is moment mein shayad mujhe, or that this girl is right for me. They don't have those rational reasons through which one is known to understand in a social way that this may be the right partner for and but Viren is a well-meaning man, is a well-meaning character. He's not done anything wrong. The conversations that he has with his bhabhi, who is his friend, you can tell through those conversations that he's saying that I know you people are right. I know you wish the well for me, and you wish the best for me, and I know that there is an ascribing way of being. I just don't get it. And I'm not saying that I want to rebel against it, but I just don't get it, and I think that you don't get me either. That kind of, those misfits are what make his universe, and because they are not able to find comfort in the situation that they're already in, is why they go looking elsewhere, which is what happens in Aditi's character also. So there is this authority that she feels indebted to, but this is not belonging. The way that they bring her up is out of obligation and social responsibility in the manner daughters are brought up. But she's also shamed. She's also, when she goes away, etc., she feels not understood. She feels like a misfit too, in that space. And of course, she's dealing with that double burden, like you said, of a family. This point of misfit is then what kind of happens in Geet, for example, is that she the way that she understands the world is weird. It sort of happens with Aditya that he feels so punctured by his life circumstances that he wants to even commit suicide. It happens in Rockstar, where most predominantly where the character feels not understood by anybody.
That's
And
a
so
good point,
even
right?
even that whole idea of the self-destructing artist, that is, I think, in a way spoofed to some extent in Rockstar. But the reason why he even gets on that journey to experience pain is because something inside him tells him that this is not where I'm supposed to be. This is not what I'm supposed to be doing, which happens in Tamasha, etc., in a big way. But all of his characters are in this quest for some kind of individual understanding of their own self, which is because of the circumstances that have bothered her. So Aditi, in that sense, because this is a rom-com, one hasn't really delved into her childhood experiences of losing parents, etc. But it is a bit of a unfortunate space to be in. One can feel and grow up to feel really unloved. Perhaps, maybe, I'm not saying, maybe that's an extreme step, because of the loss of parents or whatever. So she also doesn't feel like this is my world, this is my belonging. So she is on that quest to then find a man, but she governs this, she drives this relationship. Yeah.
Right. Continuing on, in terms of early signs of the recurring themes in his films, there are some very obvious ones, like, there is the strained father-son relationship, But I think Imtiaz Ali's most important contribution, if you will, is, for especially for, really young kids, like teenagers, to understand that, romantic destiny is not something that, goes according to plans. It just like everything else in life, it happens. It's never predictable. It doesn't go according to plan. And I think he kind of keeps on nailing that down in every film of his. And some people like it, some people hate it, but that's true. And so I think that was definitely there in Socha Na Tha, very early signs. And another thing I love about his film is that, which I believe in too, is that, it looks like he's a firm believer that travel evolves you, helps you grow and step out of your comfort zone and all those things. And I think that's very important to understand very early in life. And I think all of his films kind of show that, to an extreme, but they still kind of get that point across. So I think those two themes definitely, we get to see in Socha Na Tha. Oh, this one you touched upon, right? You touched upon the anti-authority streak in his films, and the women in his films. Let's talk about that. You had sent me this one bullet point, I remember, before we began this chat, that their relationship with authority, their struggles, their journey in finding freedom. Could you share more about that?
Institutions, I think, like I said, so I see him very anti-institution, anti-marriage. I know I keep saying marriage, even though Jab Harry Met Sejal ends at that vision of marriage, which is why I think he should have ended there and moved on to something, especially when that destination, if the destination has come to be marriage, which could also be a Shah Rukh Khan factor. If it has come, because you cannot leave the woman hanging with Shah Rukh Khan. She has to settle down, she has to feel secure, etc. So anyway, I think marriage not being the end goal is a big statement. Is a big political statement as well. It's a big social statement. He does not stress it so far because he is in a commercial space. His language and his expression is different. So he is not somebody who will give you an alternative model. I think his nature of filmmaking is also not to give an answer. I think this whole mode of conversation, ki baatein chalti rehni chahiye, is Imtiaz. I think if you analyze his films, they are set in conversation. And the point that his films make are also that conversation should never end. Which, if you look at in today's political context, cultural context in India, becomes extremely important, extremely critical, with the absence of dialogue. Complete absence of dialogue in our cultural space. There are no debates. Everything is polarized. The space for conversation is gone, is absent. So that is the other. So conversation tells you, or it implies, that you are moving away from a routine. You're creating space for something out of the ordinary. You're investing space for intimacy, to engage, to listen, to participate. This whole space, it sort of comes from, I think, one of his influences for this is theater, which he does, which he is known to. So anybody who has engaged with theater as a writer, director, performer, or even as an audience, will understand how critical conversation is. That is the whole, by conversation, I mean taking things forward in a way that's open, where the audience is as involved, you are as involved. There is a certain way of destabilizing authority of one over the other. You're saying there's an equal exchange happening. That is a recurrent motive. So you see that happening between a man and a woman. Let's say of the same class in Socha Na Tha. You have it in Geet Jab We Met. Different religions, different context. There is a conversation happening between two people who may never meet if they didn't on a train. In Rockstar, there is a different class context. There's a different communal context, in which that conversation happens. And as equals, in Highway, again, that conversation happens between two very different people from extreme ends. It happens in Tamasha, etc. So I think that conversation is again a recurring motive, and he's bringing people of different regions together to impose a certain idea of perhaps universality, which may be problematic, which may be a little simplistic. But what how I see is that it's coming from a tradition, art and culture of inclusivity, of openness, of open thought. That's the second thing. The third thing I think is his films to me, and which is what I've also talked about, is that they do not have those key songs about कि एक दिवाली का song होना चाहिए or एक whatever. You know what I mean? That and he what he will do is, for example, in a film like Rockstar, he will play somebody from perhaps a marginalized caste. I don't know. Could be a because we do not know. He comes from a poor context. Yes, he could be from a different from a marginalized caste in a dargah in an openness, and then he sees something. He puts somebody who comes from a middle class, like a young 10-year boy listening to a Homer like figure, like a fakir on the road. He's just sitting and listening to stories. Finding the space to listen is a break from routine. Capitalist society is going to tell you, your parents are going to tell you, घर जाओ, office जाओ, school से घर आओ, बातें करने मत बैठ जाना. Teachers in your class will tell you, don't talk. Don't waste your time talking. Who has the time to listen? Who has the time to engage? Even this whole idea of travel is very much linked to me with the break from routine. He's saying there is a rat race. I want you to get away from that. How are you going to think? How are you going to feel if you don't? So these questions of actually living with, engaging with yourself in an internal way happen only when you are away from these kind of established structures, established institutions.
Socha Na Tha, is also Abhay Deol's first film, and Aisha Takia's, I believe it was her second film. I think Tarzan was her first. But what great performances from these two, I mean, so natural, so good. I mean, you buy into them right away. I mean, you buy into them right away from the get-go. And I also loved the way that they have done the intros. So that's something else about Socha Na Tha, the intros and the closing sequence. Both of those things are pretty, very different for that time. It's essentially, the intros are through songs, but there are no lines or anything. We just get to see these two different people. And then slowly we're going to realize, who they are and how they're going to meet, how their paths are going to cross. And that's the same thing with the closing montage, with pictures and the song, the chartbuster song. So that was nice. But I really loved, I'm a big fan of Abhay Deol. So I love almost all his films. And for him to do this in his first film, and I remember there's an interesting anecdote. I think it was recently, actually, in some interview. Person asked him, what was your brief for Socha Na Tha? And Abhay Deol said there was no brief. And he said, maybe that's why I'm so good in that film. so, that's a note to his directors that don't try to direct him, just let him be. So, but he was so good. I mean, you buy into him. And the thing is that, he does a lot of for example, the way that he treats Carol and her family in a really bad way. And even then, we kind of somewhat sympathize with him because, we think that, okay, he's falling for some other girl, but, he really does them wrong. So, even that does come across. And again, that can be said about Geet as well, right? Because I think she does something similar with her fiance. Yeah, so I really loved the lead performances, and even the ensemble, supporting cast was great. Suresh Oberoi, Raj Jutsi is great. Vijay Moria is great. All of them are great. Rati Agnihotri is good. And even the Bhabhi, I believe that's...
Aisha Julka.
Yeah,
Aisha
Julka. Sorry, not the Bhabhi. I meant Sandhya Mridul. She plays the single sister. Right. So great acting performance, I think, across the board in Socha Na Tha. And that's it's really important. If you buy into the characters, they're going to connect. And then you're going to connect with everything that they do right or wrong. So, and that's part of a good film, right? A good film isn't just a master class in acting or something like that. It's about buying into how the actors are portraying those characters, right? And then you're going to buy into everything that they do. And I think this is a good example of that. Hey, by the way, again, I digress, but do you think Highway is his best film?
Highway apparently was screened at the Panorama section in Berlin, So I think if that counts, I think that is one thing. I, for some time, did believe that Highway was his best film. And I think it was unexpected. It was I wasn't what he did, the way that the film began from something and moved somewhere else. I think was remarkable, and
Also
and
helps that two solid actors in Alia
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
Randeep Hooda. So
Absolutely, absolutely. I was going to come to the actors bit related to your last point. And it was yeah, the way that the material, I think it was still very Imtiaz Ali. That to me is his biggest achievement. That he leaves that signature in all his films, even though Highway was a film that engaged with violence so directly, in the way that Imtiaz's other films had not. Rockstar did to some way violence of systems, Tamasha did to some way violence of institutions, but this one dealt with violence head on, and he could have gone to become the film could have gone to become something that was not Imtiaz at all with the material. But I remember, in fact, I watched it to prepare for this interview again, and I was just trying to notice what are the points that make Highway. And I think it was this moment where she is already kidnapped. There is a moment where she is inside a room, she's locked up, and she tries to escape, and there is a song playing in the background, and it's a folk song. It's a Rajasthani song, because I think they're either somewhere on the border of Rajasthan or in Gujarat, in Kutch somewhere there. And she tries to run away, and she goes a long distance, and the song is already playing, so there's a male voice there. By the time that she runs away, the song changes into a female voice, and it somehow takes the nature of a prayer. And it says that, I surrender. I don't know where I am, and I surrender. And she runs back to her kidnapper. Uh, that is unusual. It makes no sense. I tried to engage with it. I did not buy into it the same way now that I did. But I understand, and I get, does this, so the question is not mostly if I believe in what is happening or do I relate to it, is it rational or not? But is the filmmaker true to what is he convinced himself of what he's doing? Is he trying to situate that universe? And I think that moment where she has that kind of epiphany, that kind of transformative experience, and comes back, is Imtiaz Ali. No other filmmaker would have done this. They would have done it in a very different, like it could have been rationalized or even explained fictionally in many ways. But I think Imtiaz was able to shake and move somebody, grip somebody in a way that only he can. Now, as far as his best film, I think my problem with Imtiaz is that which is his thing. I think he's a storyteller. He will bring you stories. His writing is great. I don't think he's very sound technically, you know. So my huge problem with his films is that the editing of the film is just not there. So when I am now watching some of them, I'm not able to remove myself from them. In that state, then, do I compare a film that moves me tremendously versus a film that I think is well made, which is probably Love Aajkal, probably Jab We Met, that I've watched 25 times. I think that Love Aajkal is a polished, slick film, amazing. I think Jab We Met is going somewhere else, while something is happening very incredible, exciting to watch, very polished. I think as films, these two stand out to me in terms of the slickness. Perhaps production, it could be many reasons, production value, actors, whatever. Highway is definitely is top notch. I don't want to say best film to anyone, but I think it is top notch. And to come back to the point that you were making with the actors, I read somewhere that with Highway, he said that I did not write all of the scenes entirely because I wanted to not write them sitting in an AC room in Bombay. When my story is so set out there,
I've
I
heard that,
want
right.
the mountains to speak to me, right? And he said, so to do this, I need two actors who are incredible. And I think that is Highway, I think, becomes that best
He
film
got that,
category
right.
because of those actors, for sure. The energies that they bring to that film is amazing. And Imtiaz has been very all of his actor pairs are, I think, perfect for the film. Even Nargis, I would say, even though she received a lot of criticism, but I think that if you situate her in the film, rock star, her character of a Kashmiri girl who comes from a certain class, who has very little time to be wild before her destiny is already set for her. And in an interview, Imtiaz also explained this, which is very interesting. He said that Ranveer is an incredibly looking guy. He's handsome. So I have to find an actor, a female actor, who is even more good looking, so that when she rejects him or when he proposes to her, it seems like he's not deserving of her. And he said that's very difficult. So I wanted a new face because in Bollywood, every actor comes with a certain image of where they fit in our cultural space. So, like I said, Shah Rukh Khan will never be rejected. Similarly, Ranbir Kapoor is the catch. He's the catch. How can somebody else be? So, I think she did her job very well. I watched Rockstar recently. I think, and I stand by that. I think she faced criticism because we are used to only watching a certain kind of performance which we can
Yeah,
qualify as good.
right.
Highway is I but to answer you and come back from a lot of people who are not even die-hard Imtiaz fans will say, let's not talk about Highway. That was something else. So Highway was incredible. Was incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, I often say that Highway is his best film, though my favorite Imtiaz Ali film is Love Ajkal, because I think that just has a lot of heart and it stays
Yeah.
with you, even after all these years.
In Highway, there is the one of her last scenes, and she says this that if it means to be sensible, part of society is to be like you, then I do not want to be sensible. I'm already somewhere else. So those misfits, are part of his storytelling. And I think, thank God for that, because we are really used to having perfect leads, if and that is not a problem. But like I said, the context in which his films have evolved and the system that we are in now, your personality is impacted by a lot of reasons. And the other thing is that even when one talks about the obligation that Aditi faced towards her family or etc., Imtiaz Ali's films, as opposed to, I think, perhaps Kejo or an Adi Chopra film, is that they do not impose ideas of virtuous people. That that they will say that there are good people. These are good people. They're trying their best. They're not harming anybody. You know, but they are not driven by the idea of being a virtuous or a or morally absolute person in the way that social expectation is. So even when it comes to the way that romantic relationships deal with each other, he's saying they are fine, they're figuring out. However, he's not muddling the waters. That's another thing that I would say. So, for example, there are filmmakers who make films on infidelity, who make films on, marriage and breaking a marriage, etc. There, I think the space gets a little muddled up only because they try to respond to morals of society. So if you are responding to social mores, saying that this is an extramarital affair, this is wrong, inherently wrong, you know. But we are trying to figure out कि कैसे इसको बचाया जा सकता है. I think that's the space that those films get trapped in. Imtiaz Ali is saying, those mores are not my doing. I am just a person. I am going to be honest, which is why I think what you were saying with Karen and Abhay Viren's character, he did her wrong entirely, and there is no justification. But and I think that the film also did not try to be fair to her, you know. But what he says to her, he goes to their house or he finds them on the way and he says that I have done wrong to you, but I do not want to further wrong you. And the only way that I can not further wrong you is by being honest. And honestly, that I think is the only thing that one can do in a relationship to not hurt the other person. Or anywhere, even in a job. You just be honest, you know, which is the hardest thing, So there are no prescriptions in his films because there are no institutions giving you roles. Be a good student, be a good worker, be a good whatever, be a good daughter. They are just trying to dull out the background and say, I will try to be this person.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on two things before we wrap up. One was just Love Aajkal 2, and like what the hell was that? And then I'm really excited. I don't know when he's going to do this, but his dream project is essentially, he's doing some kind of his take on the love relationship between Radha and Krishna. And that's his dream project. Yeah, it's been for years. But he said that it's such a big project that he doesn't know when he's going to get to it. But, given what the kind of filmmaker that Imtiaz Ali is, it's the most exciting thing that I've heard. So, I wanted to talk about those two things. So why don't we start with Love Aajkal 2 first?
Okay. I think that, like I said, with Jab Harry Met Sage, the thing is that, like I said, his films get darker with every film that they are coming up. Okay, they're getting into they're really wrestling with emotions. When the film ended with marriage of the two beings, I think that is the end goal in our social understanding of relationships. When one had already done that, established that, because Imtiaz only works within his own universe of taking one character forward, the same story as it were, the criticism against him, the same story is repeating, or that the same characters are finding, places or engagements, etc. Jab We Met also, I think there was the wedding, but it was a different thing. It was a different thing, I would say. There was an elopement, there was a this, there was a that, and then it was just the song and dance of it. Here, it was going back and getting married with that traditional pug and everything. That this was a more strong statement on actually going back to the roots and getting into the fold, So when marriage had already been established, now what are these characters going to do? To me, now this chapter is over. Now these series of stories are over. Now you do something else. And back then, the rumor was that he is going to make a film on Madhubala. And I thought that is incredible because now he's done relationships and now he's going to, quiet all his critics to say the main character is the woman and I'm going to explore her stardom and her, scandal or her private and public life. So Love Aajkal 2, I don't get as far as his filmography and his own style of filmmaking is concerned. It doesn't fit in for me. I think it was a poor film. I don't want to keep my words back.
No doubt, yeah.
But when I watched the film, I think I will say that I got it, which is what I say about all of his films, that I got his film. I think that what he was trying to do perhaps is to to be again, once again, a reflection of how relationships are right now. And I think he wanted to, in his own way, examine his own universe. How far have I gone? Have I just been in utopia? Have I done some kind of a real, real characters and engagement? How do am I relevant anymore? Do my relationships, how do my films fare today? I think perhaps that is what because when you're doing a remake, you are examining a previous source material. So I think he was examining his own universe. What he ended up doing was an annihilation of his own universe. I think the choice of the actors, and I'll begin with that, was very much suited to the kind of film that he was intending to make. But I think it wasn't a sincere, it wasn't a very committed, it wasn't a very dedicated artwork, as like other Imtiaz's films are. If all he wanted to do was say, look at our society, we are not the same genuine, sincere, deep people that I was talking about. Now the times have changed. What we are now are flaky, frivolous people. If you're thinking about that, I think the casting is perfect. Maybe he was trying to say that, because Kartik Aaryan represents a certain, to me, like, not to dismiss him completely, but his emergence in the Bollywood space represents a certain level of association with our outrage culture. I think people who sort of like the kind of films he's done Pyar Ka Panchnama, etc., long dialogue. What I think very seriously about Bollywood casting and production is that they are not as innocent as we see them to be. I think that the choices of all actors in all productions across the board, whether it be a Sanju, whether it be a My Name is Khan, whether it be a Rab Ne Bana Di Jodi, whether it be any Abhishek Bachchan film, I think they're not as innocent as we think of them to be. I think that producers, big production houses, have a pulse on what this is going to represent. I think Akshay Kumar is a big example of that. When you're selling a certain kind of film, you cast it. So I think in that sense, Kartik Aaryan fits, because he voices concerns of a certain male, of men who feel women have wronged them. And women are, because he's done all Love Ranjan films, which is, I think, if you do an episode on Love Ranjan, just call me. I think Love Ranjan is another filmmaker who only makes romances. So that's interesting.
That would
Anyway,
be
so
like a
Kartik
complete contrast with the Imtiaz Ali
Aaryan.
episode. So
Yeah. So Kartik Aaryan represents that voice of men feeling like nice guys lose. Sara, but he also represents a voice of the emerging hero of the masses. He doesn't come from film connections. He comes from MP. He's found his own way. So Imtiaz Ali is trying to then situate. This is a demographic I have not engaged with, and this is an expression I have not engaged with, but it is finding its presence in our cultural space a lot. So this is, one kind of character I need to engage with. Sara, on the other hand, came as this side of nepotism, or she's a princess. She's very, elite. She comes from background of whatever. And Sara then also represents this section of women today, like me, who are financially independent, who have been able to move ahead because of their education, who are in a way independent really, and trying to, who do not need a man, and not a man like Kartik Aaryan's character for sure, who is a pseudo misogynist, and he's a whatever. So we are the feminist brigade, so to say. I think Imtiaz wanted to see how do these forces come together in today's time, and let's understand. But if he's saying that I have lost faith in this generation completely, that they are not capable of even having a certain depth of emotion, of even having the interest to have a sincere relationship in this time, I think if that's the poor image of our generation, I think that's the film Love Aajkal. Because it is very interesting. So, for example, if Imtiaz's older films like Rockstar begins in a space where the actor is performing in smaller spaces, not in a concert, he's singing to sex workers, to a little girl, to college students. Then you see Tamasha or others beginning in a theater space. Love आजकल 2 is beginning inside a phone कि सब लोग बस phone पे ही कर रहे हैं जो कर रहे हैं, nobody is actually engaging with real art. That is a state. It sort of also begins with Rumi's quotes on mass products, on coasters, on t-shirts, which is also this generation. Not to take away, millennials are that we may not have read Rumi's books, but we will know the Rumi quote because everything has been so simplified, so
It's very shallow,
commercialized,
yeah.
dumbed down. Yeah. So if in terms of that, I think those tokens are there. Those tokens are definitely there in the film. But it is a very dark film because when these two forces are engaging with each other, they are not coming from a place of authenticity at all. If the statement is that we have been so removed from ourselves that we do not even know how to perform honesty with each other, maybe maybe that kind of a mirror, it's too dark of a mirror to see. But there was no solace in the film. There was no good feeling, noble quote unquote thing in the film. And I find that disrespectful, and I found it vulgar actually, this representation, because okay, Sara and Karthik are engaging in frivolous whatever, but then you also brought in Randeep Hooda, and you also brought in that story, which was a story in itself. He is perhaps an extension of the character that was in Jab Harry Met Sejal, or has those shades. We understand those kind of characters. We understand those stories, which is what he said. Shahrukh ke song ka gana tha na, main gaon se aaya and I became a bitter person. You understand that hero's journey as well. That I came from a smaller space and I got so lost and I found myself into temptation. But the problem is that story became a biblical narrative, which is so anti-Imtiaz. Imtiaz doesn't do these things. I've become rotten. Arey, rotten means what? That's social, all that you could have done was to say that, I'm battling something, that wrestle wasn't there. I didn't find that conflict in that film. All it seemed was that he came from a more imposing position on matters than his earlier films. That to me was difficult because he is now getting trapped in ideas of good and bad, wrong and right, deceit and honesty and this and that, which is not Imtiaz Ali. His ideas come from these kind of otherworldly narratives, from Ghalib, from Hafiz, from Tehla Majnu. I thought, we didn't touch upon, was incredible, although he's not the director, but I think that was an incredible. So those, he tried to, I think he, in his own examination of his work, he tried to place his universe with respect to a more cruder world that we know today. But I think he lost, he couldn't hold his ground. And
he lost
that
the plot
is
somewhere, yeah. That's for
he
sure.
lost it. He lost the plot. And then once you get into these ideas of I did wrong or I did right, there is no getting away. There are no right answers. So Love Aajkal, I think, could have been, that pairing was exciting. What they're saying was exciting. But it just was not. It was not his best work.
Yeah, definitely not. I think we did a nice job of kind of geeking out almost the whole filmography.
Yeah.
This was great, Kanika. Thank you so much. I think you, true to your word, you really analyzed it. So I'm really glad that you, brought in this particular perspective. Really glad. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I hope I didn't blabber on.
No, absolutely not. Thank you so much. If you like the episode, do consider supporting the show. Your support will help me continue creating content like this for fans of Indian cinema everywhere across the world. You can find the link for supporting the show in the episode notes and also on the podcast website. Also, do share this episode on Twitter, Insta, or Facebook. And do subscribe, rate, and review the pod wherever you listen to your pods. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at loveofcinemasf8. Feel free to reach out there or by email with your comments, feedback, and suggestions. You can find my email in the episode notes. That's the episode. This is Himanshu signing off. And as always, thank you for listening to the Love of Cinema podcast.